Throughout a period of many years, Mary had always turned to Jesus for help in every crisis of their home life at Nazareth, so that it was only natural for her to think of him at this time. But this ambitious mother had still other motives for appealing to her eldest son on this occasion. As Jesus was standing alone in a corner of the garden, his mother approached him, saying, "My son, they have no wine." And Jesus answered, "My good woman, what have I to do with that?" Said Mary, "But I believe your hour has come. Can you not help us?" Jesus replied, "Again I declare that I have not come to do things in this wise. Why do you trouble me again with these matters?" And then, breaking down in tears, Mary entreated him, "But my son, I promised them that you would help us. Won't you please do something for me?" And then spoke Jesus, "Woman, what have you to do with making such promises? See that you do it not again. We must in all things wait upon the will of the Father in heaven." Mary, the mother of Jesus, was crushed. She was stunned. As she stood there before him motionless, with the tears streaming down her face, the human heart of Jesus was overcome with compassion for the woman who had borne him in the flesh. And bending forward, he laid his hand tenderly upon her head, saying, Now, Mother Mary, grieve not over my apparently hard sayings, for have I not many times told you that I have come only to do the will of my heavenly Father? Most gladly would I do what you ask of me if it were a part of the Father's will." And Jesus stopped short. He hesitated. Mary seemed to sense that something was happening. Leaping up, she threw her arms around Jesus' neck, kissed him, and rushed off to the servants' quarters, saying, "Whatever my son says, that do." But Jesus said nothing. He now realized that he had already said, or rather desirefully thought, too much. Mary was dancing with glee. She did not know how the wine would be produced, but she confidently believed that she had finally persuaded her firstborn son to assert his authority, to dare to step forth and claim his position and exhibit his messianic power. And because of the presence and association of certain universe powers and personalities, of which all those present were wholly ignorant, she was not to be disappointed. The wine Mary desired, and which Jesus, the God-man, humanly and sympathetically wished for, was forthcoming. Near at hand stood 6 water-pots of stone, filled with water, holding about 20 gallons apiece. This water was intended for subsequent use in the final purification ceremonies of the wedding celebration. The commotion of the servants about these huge stone vessels, under the busy direction of his mother, attracted Jesus' attention, and going over, he observed that they were drawing wine out of them by the pitcherful. It was gradually dawning upon Jesus what had happened. Of all persons present at the marriage feast of Cana, Jesus was the most surprised. Others had expected him to work a wonder, but that was just what he had purposed not to do. And then the Son of Man recalled the admonition of his personalized thought adjuster in the hills. He recounted how the adjuster had warned him about the inability of any power or personality to deprive him of the creator prerogative of independence of time. On this occasion, power transformers, midwayers, and all other required personalities were assembled near the water and other necessary elements, and in the face of the expressed wish of the universe creator sovereign, there was no escaping the instantaneous appearance of wine. And this occurrence was made doubly certain, since the personalized adjuster had signified that the execution of the Son's desire was in no way a contravention of the Father's will. But this was in no sense a miracle. No law of nature was modified, abrogated, or even transcended. Nothing happened but the abrogation of time, in association with the celestial assembly of the chemical elements requisite for the elaboration of the wine. At Cana on this occasion, the agents of the Creator made wine just as they do by the ordinary natural processes, except that they did it independently of time, and with the intervention of superhuman agencies in the matter of the space assembly of the necessary chemical ingredients. Furthermore, it was evident that the enactment of this so-called miracle was not contrary to the will of the Paradise Father, else it would not have transpired, since Jesus had already subjected himself in all things to the Father's will. When the servants drew this new wine and carried it to the best man, the ruler of the feast, and when he had tasted it, he called to the bridegroom, saying, "It is the custom to set out first the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, to bring forth the inferior fruit of the vine. But you have kept the best of the wine until the last of the feast." Mary and the disciples of Jesus were greatly rejoiced at the supposed miracle which they thought Jesus had intentionally performed. But Jesus withdrew to a sheltered nook of the garden and engaged in serious thought for a few brief moments. He finally decided that the episode was beyond his personal control under the circumstances and, not being adverse to his Father's will, was inevitable. When he returned to the people, they regarded him with awe. They all believed in him as the Messiah. But Jesus was sorely perplexed, knowing that they believed in him only because of the unusual occurrence which they had just inadvertently beheld. Again Jesus retired for a season to the housetop, that he might think it all over. Jesus now fully comprehended that he must constantly be on guard, lest his indulgence of sympathy and pity become responsible for repeated episodes of this sort. Nevertheless, many similar events occurred before the Son of Man took final leave of his mortal life in the flesh. 5. Back in Capernaum. Though many of the guests remained for the full week of wedding festivities, Jesus, with his newly chosen disciple apostles, James, John, Andrew, Peter, Philip, and Nathanael, departed very early the next morning for Capernaum, going away without taking leave of anyone. Jesus' family and all his friends in Cana were much distressed because he so suddenly left them, and Jude, Jesus' youngest brother, set out in search of him. Jesus and his apostles went directly to the home of Zebedee at Bethsaida. On this journey, Jesus talked over many things of importance to the coming kingdom with his newly chosen associates, and especially warned them to make no mention of the turning of the water into wine. He also advised them to avoid the cities of Sepphoris and Tiberias in their future work. After supper that evening, in this home of Zebedee and Salome, there was held one of the most important conferences of all Jesus' earthly career. Only the 6 apostles were present at this meeting. Jude arrived as they were about to separate. These 6 chosen men had journeyed from Cana to Bethsaida with Jesus, walking, as it were, on air. They were alive with expectancy and thrilled with the thought of having been selected as close associates of the Son of Man. But when Jesus set out to make clear to them who he was, and what was to be his mission on earth, and how it might possibly end, they were stunned. They could not grasp what he was telling them. They were speechless. Even Peter was crushed beyond expression. Only the deep-thinking Andrew dared to make reply to Jesus' words of counsel. When Jesus perceived that they did not comprehend his message, when he saw that their ideas of the Jewish Messiah were so completely crystallized, he sent them to their rest while he walked and talked with his brother Jude. And before Jude took leave of Jesus, he said with much feeling, "My father, brother, I never have understood you. I do not know of a certainty whether you are what my mother has taught us, and I do not fully comprehend the coming kingdom. But I do know you are a mighty man of God. I heard the voice at the Jordan, and I am a believer in you, no matter who you are." And when he had spoken, he departed, going to his own home at Magdala. That night Jesus did not sleep. Donning his evening wraps, he sat out on the lake shore thinking until the dawn of the next day. In the long hours of that night of meditation, Jesus came clearly to comprehend that he never would be able to make his followers see him in any other light than as the long-expected Messiah. At last he recognized that there was no way to launch his message of the kingdom except as the fulfillment of John's prediction and as the one for whom the Jews were looking. After all, though he was not the Davidic type of Messiah, he was truly the fulfillment of the prophetic utterances of the more spiritually minded of the olden seers. Never again did he wholly deny that he was the Messiah. He decided to leave the final untangling of this complicated situation to the outworking of the Father's will. The next morning Jesus joined his friends at breakfast, but they were a cheerless group. He visited with them, and at the end of the meal gathered them about him, saying, "It is my Father's will that we tarry hereabouts for a season. You have heard John say that he came to prepare the way for the kingdom. Therefore it behooves us to await the completion of John's preaching. When the forerunner of the Son of Man shall have finished his work, we will begin the proclamation of the good tidings of the kingdom." He directed his apostles to return to their nets, while he made ready to go with Zebedee to the boat shop, promising to see them the next day at the synagogue where he was to speak, and appointing a conference with them that Sabbath afternoon. 6. The events of a Sabbath day. Jesus' first public appearance following his baptism was in the Capernaum synagogue on Sabbath, March 2,